Hey everybody, and welcome back to Flyfish University. It is Friday morning, which means it's time for another episode of Q&A Friday. My name is Jordan Ulrich, and our purpose, our mission with Flyfish University is shortening your fly fishing learning curve and ultimately bringing you a better experience on the water, helping you find a bit of a sense that you know what you're doing. When you feel like you know what you're doing, even to some degree, fly fishing becomes so much more enjoyable. Before we get started, I want to remind you that we have a free workshop coming up, the Fly Fishing Accelerator Workshop, on March 23rd, 24th, and 25th. If this is your first year fly fishing, if this is your 10th year fly fishing and you want a bit of a refresher, or you want to fix maybe some poor habits that you've acquired in your time spent on the water, this would be a perfect place to start. You can go to flyfishuniversity.com/accelerator. This is a completely free 3-night event. I'm super excited about it. We're really going to be going deep on not just the basics, but some of the small intricacies and really subtle details that make a huge difference when you're on the water. I really think that this event is going to help make 2021 your best season fly fishing yet. Today we're getting started. It's Q&A Friday. We have 3 questions from anglers all around North America. I was about to say all around the world. Sometimes we do get them from all around the world. But the first one, and I love this one. I'm starting to get super into fishing still waters, but have a hard time believing that a tiny chironomid will even be seen by fish. Help. Help. That's great. It's a true cry for I need some assistance. Okay, so that's from Rick from Toronto. And Rick, that is very relatable because living in British Columbia, stillwater fly fishing is something that I've been in love with since I started fishing. The first few years of my life I spent growing up in a cabin on a small lake outside of Kamloops, British Columbia. So this is a hurdle that most people don't ever get over, so they revert back to the idea that a bigger fly is better for catching bigger fish, that they will revert back to trolling because it's comfortable and it's safe, and maybe they've caught some fish doing it before. But you have to understand the premise that whales eat krill, elephants eat peanuts. Huge trout can often be found gorging on tiny little flies. The way that you get over this hurdle is you just start doing it and you force yourself to let that bug sit down there and do its thing. It's easy. When I started chironomid fishing, I had no confidence in it whatsoever. So what was happening was I would get to this place of like my fly would maybe get down where it needed to be, and then all of a sudden it was like I would change it. I would take it off. I would put on something else. And the problem with this is that the fly is never spending enough time at depth. The fly is never ever spending enough time where it needs to be, so it's never going to get eaten in the first place. You really have to get past that hurdle of, if trout are feeding on these little bugs, they will be able to find mine. If they're eating the naturals, they'll be able to find my imitation. But it's a tough one. I definitely agree that that's a tricky one to get over sometimes, because it just makes no sense that a 10-pound, a 30-inch rainbow trout could be eating a size 20 chironomid. Just is mind-blowing, and it's super fun. The more you do it, the more faith you start to have in those tiny little bugs, but it comes to letting the fly fish. Let the fly fish at depth. Okay, this is very important. If you're interested in chironomid fishing, Phil Rowley and I have a joint venture website called stillwaterflyfishingacademy.com. It's like this, but it's only for stillwater fanatics. Okay, question number 2. When fish swim up to a dry fly, they look at it and swim away. What does this mean? Well, this is from Jordan in Vancouver. So first I would say nice name. I happen to share the same one. The next thing I would say is that when fish swim up to a dry fly and they decide not to eat it, this is called a refusal. A refusal typically is taking place when the fish is somewhat quasi-interested in your offering, but they aren't quite committed to it. 3 things typically are going to fix this. A lot of times they'll sit under your fly and they'll like hang their nose on it, but they won't commit to actually eating. Or you'll just see kind of a boil around your fly, and a lot of times what that is a fish swimming up and swimming down really quickly. They made that last minute decision. They're not going to eat the fly that you threw to them. Okay, so 3 fixes for this in my experience of dry fly fishing. The first one is downsize the size of your fly. Okay, even one size is good. One size is okay. That's an okay place to start. Sometimes it's just that there's something off about your presentation. There's something about your presentation that it's not quite right for them. Okay, so the first thing I would do, bump the size of your fly down by 1 or 2 sizes. If you know what they're eating, okay, and you think that you're pretty close, definitely start with 1 size smaller of a fly. The second thing that I would say is to downsize the diameter of your tippet. Okay, so if your tippet is too thick, sometimes it might be a little bit too visible to them, especially on really technical fisheries where you're seeing a lot of fishing pressure. Okay, there's a lot of people fishing. Definitely downsize the diameter of your tippet. Just go 1 step. So if you're fishing 4x tippet and you're getting a lot of refusals, bump it down to 3x, or sorry, bump it down to 5x and just see what happens. Okay, so bring that 4x down to 5x. You're still getting a lot of refusals, maybe try going 5x to 6x. But another thing I would say, this can make a huge difference, is to lengthen your leader, even just a foot to 2 feet. Sometimes this can be all the difference, is fishing a nice long leader that's keeping your fly line, especially with an upstream presentation, keeping your fly line well away from the fly. Okay, so smaller fly, smaller tippet, longer leader, those 3 things in unison, that's a powerful, stealthy approach to finicky fish that are eating dry flies. Okay, and the last one is a fighting butt on a single-handed rod advantageous. That's from Dave from Lone Butte. And that's a great question. So the fighting butt on the back end of a fly rod, okay, the little cork or rubber or composite knob that you're going to see at the back end of some fly rods, okay, is it an advantage? Well, the fighting butt, typically you're going to see them on rods that are, you won't really see fighting butt too much on a rod lighter than a 5 weight. You'll see fighting butt on some 5 weights and some 6 weights, typically longer 5 weights and 6 weights. So a lot of time you won't see fighting butts on like maybe a 9-footer, but you'll see them more on a 9.5 to 10 foot 5 or 6 weight. That's pretty common. Starting at a 7 weight up to a 12 weight or beyond, super big game stuff, you're going to see a fighting butt on every single rod for the most part. 99.95% of them. I don't know who makes the percentage that doesn't have them, but the reason for this is that when you're fishing with a heavier rod, okay, you're using, a lot of times you're trying to lock that fighting butt into your belt buckle, and a lot of times you're really pulling, if you're pulling on big fish, you're pulling from the back end of the rod. Okay, you're pulling with the bottom end of the rod. It's important to have that fighting butt to stick somewhere, against your stomach, against your belt, something along those lines. Without the fighting butt and you're just sticking the back end of the reel seat in it, it's can cause some bruising maybe. The other thing that you can do with a fighting butt is that you can actually lock it in right here. You can actually rest it against your forearm, okay? So sometimes what'll happen is, that fighting butt just allows you to pull a little bit more with your arm and feel like you're pulling a little bit less with your hand or your wrist. It's not a very effective way to pull on fish. So you just get a little bit more leverage. It gives you a little bit of a place to rest the back end of the rod, whether it's on your arm or whether it's on your stomach, on your belt buckle, on your waist, somewhere along those lines. So I hope that makes sense. And yeah, so a fighting butt, I like them in some applications. I will have them on some of my lake fishing rods, but I don't like them on shorter, like a dry fly fishing setup. For example, I like to have. They also add a little bit of weight to the rod. I mean, it's not we're splitting hairs a little bit here, but I would say lighter than like my 5 weights. I would definitely look at, I don't really use a fighting butt at all, and you're not going to find them much on 4 weights, 3 weights, 2 weights, anything like that. I hope that this made sense. I hope this was incredibly valuable to you. Q&A Friday has become like just one of my favorite things in the world. So again, if you want to head to the Fly Fishing Accelerator Workshop, completely free event, March 23rd, 24th, 25th, you can head to flyfishuniversity.com/accelerator. I will be teaching it live, and I'm so very excited because I think it's going to be a really great time. I think that this is going to add value to your fly fishing season in 2021, even if you're just starting, especially if you're just starting, because you want to start with the right habits. It's hard to get started and then 10 years later have to reverse all your bad habits. Anyways, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Fly Fish University, and I will see you on Wednesday morning. Have a great weekend.